absolutely right. I was cheering you on.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, on this day we come together to celebrate our great city, our mayor, our public officials, and to share in the power of vision, community, and purpose. On this day, we pray for our city, its leaders, and our citizens. We lift up those who have brought us to where we are today with the vision for a strong, viable, and welcoming city. On this day, we who are blessed to live in this place give thanks for those who work together on a daily basis to ensure that our great city of East Grand Forks will serve as a model of vibrant neighborhoods, educational excellence, financial growth, and community connectedness. We ask your blessing on this gathering, on our mayor, on our leaders, and upon us all. May the one who is peace bring peace to our city, our nation, and to our world. Amen. And now let us pause to give thanks for the blessings of the meal that we are about to receive. May our food and conversation celebrate God's goodness and inspire us to greater service. We are grateful for time with colleagues, for fond memories and the food that has been prepared for us. Keep us mindful of those less fortunate and inspire in us creative ways to share our bounty. Bless us with this meal and fill us with gratitude and love as we give thanks in your name. Amen.
I know some of us just got our food, but if everybody could just pause in eating for a moment and please rise for the color guard and the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Oofta. Well, welcome everybody. It's hard to see in here. It's kind of like last time I played hockey here. Welcome to the 6th annual East Grand Forks State of the City. Appreciate great response we've had for the event. Most of all, would like to thank our sponsors, and also East Side is great for many things, obviously hockey and a lot of other sports, but mainly the people is what it makes East Side great. And between East Grand Forks and Grand Forks, we're working on bridges and roads and things like that. But first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Corporate sponsors: Alaris Financial, All True, American Federal, City of Grand Forks Construction Engineers, CPS, Franson Bank, Grand Forks Herald, Northland, RJ Zabril & Son, Sanford, Strata, University of North Dakota, Landry's Heating and Air Conditioning, Woodseth, Visit Greater Grand Forks, and then AE2S, Bremer Bank, Countrywide Sanitation, Northland Custom Woodwork, Riverview Health, Excel, and for these fancy lights, HB Sound and Light. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Steve Gander. Mayor Gander is a native of Eastside. He's attended school at East Grand Forks, University of North Dakota, and then Illinois College of Optometry in Chicago, where he graduated cum laude in 1987. I made a note here that he got 2 degrees before I got 1. After graduation, he joined Opticare Forks Vision Clinic, where he practiced with Dr. Storhag and Dr. Coles and their team. And then probably the most important part is what he likes to do. He likes to run, camp, snowmobile, hunt. Most of all, spend time with Roz and his children and grandchildren. Please welcome the best eye doctor mayor in Minnesota, Dr. Gander.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Good to have you here. State of the City address. Thanks to everyone who makes it possible. And to everyone online and everyone who streams it later on, welcome. Again, thanks to the sponsors. Without the sponsors, this event doesn't happen. We appreciate every single one of you. You know, the sponsors are on both sides of the river. Almost creates like a bridge between the two communities. Thanks to East Grand Forks Chamber of Commerce, especially Kimberly Strum, Barry Wilford. And thanks to Tommy Kenville. Tommy, as board chair, I know you're serving the business community and all of our residents. You have a long history of service to this whole region, and thank you for all of that. Pastor Sonia Brooklocker, thank you so much for the invocation. Appreciate it very much. Thank you to the Honor Guard from the East Grand Forks Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 3817. Thank you so much to Missy Cope for singing our national anthem today. Thanks to Megan Nelson and also our Corey Thompson, technology manager. Megan is our city clerk, Corey, our technology manager from Water and Light. It turns out this talk today is not going to be funny because I had Megan proof it. She took out all my jokes. Something about middle school. Thanks to HB Sound and Light for all the work that you've done to make this happen. Amazing how you put this whole thing together. I would also like to thank David Murphy, our city administrator, and all of our department heads. Without any of you and the work that you do, of course, we wouldn't have a city in terms of providing service to our people, so thank you. Thank you, President Mark Olstead and all of our city council members. There's a great teamwork around here, even though we butt heads once in a while. The ability to have strong, respectful disagreement while maintaining friendship is a big deal. My wife and I do it all the time. Thank you to everyone who serves on our boards and commissions. Once again, the time that you donate to really bring everything that we do, all the service that we provide, all the departments that we run. You know, we really, really crave community input, and the input that you bring every single time that you meet and gather to deliberate, and the time you spend studying ahead of those meetings. Thank you for all of that. One important reason to have the State of the City event is to keep us accountable. We need to make plans according to the preferences of the people that we serve, and then we need to come back and show that we've actually made progress toward the plans that we've made. At last year's State of the City, I shared several objectives that we had for 2021. Many of them were long-range plans and so are still in the works, and we've made progress actually on every single one of those. Our number one goal for 2021 was to move forward with our park and recreation updates, including our ice arenas and baseball diamonds. We've continued to work on the plan, and currently we have legislation in St. Paul, which we'll hear from here in a moment, to bring it to the vote of the people this fall. Ultimately, it will be their vote, their preference that will prevail. Everything else up to that point is to hopefully inform and educate them to make the decision that they would want to make with all the information. I'm proud of all of our park and recreation programs. I'm a big believer in lifelong fitness, and everything we do requires teamwork. It's a good thing for these young men and women to get off the couch, get into the game, and have fun doing it. This year, our Pee Wee A and Bantam A teams both won their respective state tournaments here in the state of Minnesota. So that tells me our high school program in the near future also is going to be pretty strong. So now I'd like to invite Reed Huttonen, East Grand Forks Park and Rec Superintendent, to bring us an update on our ice arenas and baseball complex, along with some exciting news about our Greenway and boat launch project. Reed.
Well, thank you, Mayor Gander, for the great invitation to participate in today's event, and I'm excited to be able to be here again this year to update everyone on some of the progress we've made on the projects that I discussed with each of you last year. As Mayor Gander mentioned, the first step is our Greenway improvements that we've been planning on for a few years. The Lefebvre Park area was developed in initial strategic plans after the flood of 1997 as a primary focus for improvements by our community. And in 2019, we created a master plan with input from our community of where we would like to see improvements made and amenities added within this park. I'm excited to update today the news that came out earlier this year that we received a 75% matching grant from the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission to invest $850,000 of state legacy dollars into this park, and a 25% matching grant of city funds to bring us to more than $1 million in improvements. The improvements that will be made are being planned to happen sometime in the 2024 construction season. The primary focus of these improvements will be replacing this old aged boat ramp, the only access we have on the Red River on the Minnesota side in East Grand Forks, with a new 2-boat launch and parking spaces for up to 30 trucks and trailers within the park setting. In addition to these boat launch improvements, we also plan to make street improvements to the park access road, First Street North, which runs through the park and through the 2 softball fields that we often refer to as the Sacred Heart Fields. A phase 2 of this master plan has funding applications in the works through the through the American Rescue Plan Act, the Outdoor Travel, Recreation, and Tourism Program. That application is in place right now, and we're awaiting news on whether or not that piece of the project will be funded. If that piece is funded, it will include additional amenities and improvements to shoreline restoration in the lower area of the park, adding some native grasses, some walking trails, and improved access to get people to the river for kayak launches or fishing sites along the rivers. The second project that we've been working a lot on throughout 2021 is our indoor recreation facilities and our outdoor baseball field complexes. Throughout 2021, we had a volunteer building committee that spent countless hours going through online surveys, community feedback that we received from citizens in the form of well more than 1,000 responses from survey respondents and private meetings with community leaders and business owners on if improvements are made within these facilities, what the improvements should look like, and how we'd like these facilities to better serve our residents going forward. In September of last year, we detailed a master plan for these recreation facilities with our city council and had a couple of months of really detailed discussion about how this building committee has recommended improvements and where we'd like to see the priorities placed on these improvements. Number one, the first goal we have is placed on taking care of the facilities we currently have. We looked at this as really a reinvestment plan in our facilities. Number one being we have great indoor arenas already that we'd like to see continue to stand the test of time. And there's a significant amount of investment that needs to be placed back in them, specifically a facility like we're in today, the Civic Center. It's not ADA compliant. As you came in today or as you leave, take a look at the parking lot and the access in and out of the building. You'll see there's a large investment that needs to be made in that. The second step of it is that this is the exciting piece of it, the strategic growth of how we plan to use our recreation facilities going forward. Shown on the screen here is a concept of a baseball field that would be built on this Civic Center site. This would be a full-size synthetic turf field that would not only serve a high school or American Legion baseball team, but it'd be set up so that it could be multi-purpose and serve really the vast array of outdoor turf or grass sports that we have, whether that be lacrosse, soccer, softball, youth activities like the summer activities we offer in Parks and Recreation. But all have an opportunity to be here at the Civic Center site to make use of the amenities that are inside the building, to have improved access with better parking, better access for pedestrians or bicyclists to get here, and all have it be able to be on one site, so it would afford additional operating efficiencies for our staff to be able to have it all on one site as well. Inside the Civic Center, within these improvements, we would plan for an addition out the east side of the building adjacent to this new baseball field that would have new locker rooms added to it on the lowest level, on the ice level, and on the second floor of it have a multi-purpose community space, lobby space that could be used for community functions, for community meetings, for events, and be available on a year-round basis for rentals for those community needs. And that's a look of what the updated lobby could look like. At the VFW Blue Line site, the primary plan with that, in addition to taking care of the initial facilities and the improvements that are needed, is to build a connecting link between the two arenas. The VFW and Blue Line Arena has about a 6,000 square foot space. It's open grass space right now. And this plan would be to connect those two buildings together and bring forward a new lobby space, community center type atmosphere that could be used again on a year-round basis for community events, for health and wellness opportunities. There'd be a space for people to rent if they wanted to host a birthday party and have some ice skating at the same time, and just numerous additional activities that aren't currently afforded to us in our kind of seasonal ice rinks that we offer today. So the big question with all of this is, how are we going to fund it? And that's, as Mayor Gander referred to, is a lot of work has been put into it throughout the course of the last year in planning, and we certainly know that there's a lot of work left to be done. One portion of a funding plan to be able to execute this master plan we have is to look at a potential local sales tax increase. In January of this year, the City Council authorized a request for us to go to the Minnesota State Legislature and ask for approval for our citizens to vote for a 1.25% increase for 20 years or until 21.5 million in project funds has been generated through the tax increase. With legislative approval, that will come to our voters on November 8th at this year's general election. So we've got one more hurdle left to face, in that the legislature needs to include it in a tax bill. The House of Representatives has heard it and included it in their tax bill proposal. It should be heard in the Minnesota Senate tax committees in the coming weeks. Assuming we get that approval, again, we would go to a vote in November. Between now and then, in the interim, we expect to have a lot of opportunities to be able to further educate the community about the needs the facilities have, how the funding would work, and where these tax dollars, if approved, would go. And ultimately, we hope and encourage everybody to be active participants in that, and look forward to the opportunity we have to really further the recreation facilities we have within our community. So in closing with that, I just want to again thank Mayor Gander for the opportunity to speak, the City Council for their support, and ultimately, and I think most importantly, the volunteers within our community that spend so many hours volunteering for these recreation programs. Without their support, whether that be coaches, driving their kids to activities, spending time on committees such as this one, none of our programs would be the programs they are today. And we certainly look forward and encourage that continued engagement going forward.
Thanks, Reed. really proud of all of our city council members, especially those who agree with me. That's like 2, actually. But coming forward here in a moment to talk about some of the infrastructure and transit kind of stuff that we're working on. We're working on, as you know, Bigland Road, we're working on South End Bridges, and we're working on a street going into the industrial park. So this time I would like to call on Brian Larson, council member, to update us on some of those projects.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And I have to warn you, as an engineer in my professional life, I'm passionate about charts and graphs, maps and data points. So bear with me here, or humor me a little bit as we go through some areas that I'm very passionate about. At a high level, we'll take a look at the progress being made on the South End Bridge Initiative, or I should say bridges. It's always important to understand that we need 2 bridges here between East Grand Forks and Grand Forks. Master planning and intersection improvements along Bigland Road, an area where we're seeing the strongest growth in East Grand Forks, as well as access to our industrial park and some of the challenges that we have related to economic growth in that aspect of our community. So South End bridges, as I said, it's bridges plural. It's very important that we need 2 bridges to keep up with the growth that we're seeing in our community. So the first bridge is Amerifield Road into rural Polk County Bridge. This bridge serves as a bypass around Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, for heavy truck traffic, agricultural, such as sugar beet truck traffic, or those who simply want to bypass from I-29 over to Highway 2. This will help to keep the sugar beet trucks and a lot of the heavy truck traffic that we see coming right through downtown Grand Forks, downtown East Grand Forks, in front of our schools, outside of our town, but still able to access our industrial zones to keep our economy growing. The neighborhood bridge serves a very different function. As I believe everyone knows here, we've seen most of our residential growth to the south end of East Grand Forks and in Grand Forks. And currently there is a heavy traffic congestion as people are traveling from the south end of both of our respective communities. We're missing that bridge connection that provides a clear path for people traveling across the river multiple times a day, and it is creating a number of traffic congestion problems now and into the future. As we look into the future, it's really clear on why we need this bridge. This map I'm showing here shows traffic volumes estimated for the year 2045 with a no bridge build scenario. And as you can see, South Washington Road is in the red, and the red essentially means it's a failing roadway. This road is congested, we're backed up through the intersections, we're not able to provide the emergency services that are necessary to support our community. We're also very congested across the Point Bridge, throughout Demers, and in residential neighborhoods, Belmont Road and Bigland Road in East Grand Forks. So as you can see, we're really headed for a problem, and I think we can even see it now. How does a bridge help? Well, I think it's very clear for a lot of us that do travel back and forth across the river each day that this bridge would drastically reduce traffic running north and south through residential and commercial neighborhoods in Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. It'll reduce traffic on Belmont Road, and it will drastically reduce traffic on the Point Bridge, which is already a challenge. Bigland Road has many challenging intersections as well. This will help to alleviate some of the back and forth traffic that we see from our school zones and other areas and make for a much more efficient morning and afternoon peak commute. The neighborhood bridge has been reviewed by a joint ad hoc committee made up of Grand Forks and East Grand Forks residents as well as elected officials. And I had the pleasure to serve on that committee, and one of the great aspects was the amount of public input that we received throughout the bridge review. While we didn't have a lot of attendance for the in-person public input, the online had a lot of great interest. As you can see, we had over 15,000 visits. Documents were downloaded nearly 500 times, and we had nearly 400 bridge surveys completed. One of the questions on the surveys is which bridge alternative do you prefer? No build, Elks Drive, or 32nd Avenue? And the 32nd Avenue option received over 56% of the vote. This is just a quick visualization of what a South End neighborhood bridge could look like. You would see 2 lanes passing between East Grand Forks and Grand Forks. They would be signed for no trucks. I think it's very important to emphasize that this neighborhood bridge is not designed or permitting truck traffic. There would be a pedestrian or bike trail connecting both of our communities, and it would pass over our greenway and retain that wonderful trail that would pass underneath of it. And here's the charts and graphs and data points that I mentioned earlier. But I kind of clouded the bottom area, and that's the most important aspect to review. When we looked at all these different bridge options, one of the most important analyses that we did was the overall economic benefit of enhancing transportation opportunities in our community versus the cost of a new bridge. And I'm happy to say that the 32nd Avenue bridge location does provide a positive net economic growth to bridge cost ratio, meaning that it provides a greater good than the overall cost to the taxpayers. So some of the next steps moving ahead here, East Grand Forks is taking the lead on acquiring a program manager that will help us navigate the next steps with environmental permitting, requesting funding from the federal and state levels, and even looking at some initial design. And as I mentioned earlier, this bridge has to be a complete and total partnership with the city of Grand Forks. This is not an East Grand Forks project or a Grand Forks project. We'll work together with our friends and neighbors across the river to make sure that this bridge meets the needs of our entire community. And then lastly, school zone and school zone safety, regardless of what side of the river it is on, will remain the highest priority in this bridge design. Moving ahead here, Bigland Road. Bigland Road was studied deeply in 2015. It was a study that included quite a bit of public involvement, which is wonderful to see. In that overall study on Bigland Road, we looked at short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements that are needed to continue to allow traffic to efficiently flow and move safely. Some of the near-term improvements that were suggested, and near-term is the 5 to 10 time frame. Near term, an improvement needs to be made to the Reinhardt and Bigland intersection. It's kind of a goofy geometry intersection, I think, as everyone knows. It's a very challenging access point to get onto Bigland Road if you're there at 7:45 in the morning. I myself have to get there about 7:20, otherwise I have a panic attack. And then I drive around until 7:35 and drop off my daughter every day. So it's a real issue. It is a problem for a short time, but that doesn't change the fact that this is a problem area. We've been fortunate enough here in East Grand Forks that we have not had a major injury at this intersection, but we don't want to wait for that. We need to fix this issue now and move forward with a safer intersection. And so following MnDOT standards and suggestions from our engineers, a roundabout is the first design that will be considered. We're looking at it here from the council level, and hopefully we'll see where it goes. One interesting tidbit here is based on population growth and projected traffic volume, by the year 2030, at the very peak morning rush, it's estimated that it'll be a 3-minute wait per car to turn from Reinhardt onto Bigland. And that just gets progressively worse as you move into 2045. Another near-term investment is increasing pedestrian safety at 13th and Bigland. This is the crossing of Bigland that would allow grades 3 through 8 to be able to travel across the road and walk or ride their bikes to school, if the weather's ever good enough for that. And so we're looking into a hawk signal. Now what a hawk signal looks like, you can see on the image on the screen. This would require a full stop action after the button is pushed on north and southbound Bigland Road, allowing for much safer and I think much happier parents to allow our kids to cross Bigland Road, accessing the school zones. I think it's a wonderful fit, and stay tuned for more progress on that. Some of the mid and long-term improvements, this is looking out past 2030 into 2040. This is kind of a unique look at improving the intersection of 5th Avenue North and Bigland Road. This is just past the flood wall. There would be another roundabout proposed for this location. This could include a connection for the VFW and the Blue Line Arena driveway as well. I can tell you as a proud figure skating dad, leaving the VFW after practice can be pretty challenging, and that's 7 nights a week up here. And so looking forward to this, but this is a little further down the road. Another roundabout that was proposed is at 13th and Bigland, which I just mentioned for the hawk signal. Now we're fairly confident that in the 2030 decade, we may have traffic counts here that would warrant an actual traffic signal. Now, traffic signals may be the proposed option or a roundabout, yet to be seen, but it's important to know that this intersection is under planning and it will be improved as our population continues to grow. Lastly here, I just wanted to review another project that we have in planning. This is the improvement of the 10th Street Northeast Reconstruction. This is the access to the East Grand Forks Industrial Park. The pavement here has fallen into disrepair. We have a number of utility issues. East Grand Forks Public Works guys do a wonderful job keeping this road open and going, but it's well past its lifetime. And so if we're going to look for economic growth, try and expand good paying jobs in our community, we need to have a good road that gets people to and from our industrial park. So another very important job for East Grand Forks. That kind of wraps up my presentation for the day. If anybody has any other suggestions for roundabout locations, please reach out to the mayor. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. He never saw a roundabout he didn't like. Never met a man I didn't like. Will Rogers. You know, we have someone to talk here in a moment. It's really neat how the contrast came about. We are really locked on to infrastructure, streets. We talk a lot about these bridges. There are two streets that intersect. It's one area, 20th Street Northwest and 5th Avenue. It's been a challenge really for 30 plus years. We lived on that street when Roz and I were first married, and it was in poor shape back then, and it's only gotten worse since then. We've had several council meetings to try to figure out how we're going to replace those streets, and one resident of that area, her name's Misty Cope, she came and kind of gave us the what for, and she's so pleasant that we were actually glad she came. So at this time, I'd like to call on Misty to continue that. She is not an engineer. Thank you.
Yeah. I maybe should be an engineer, so I know what I'm talking about. But, good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be speaking today to you, East Grand Forks, and I'm definitely honored to be speaking on behalf of my neighborhood, my new neighborhood, actually, concerning the proposed replacement of the streets of 20th Street and 5th Avenue Northwest. I have to do this too, okay. I've sure learned a lot in the past few months regarding our proposed street replacement project. I've also learned that this is an old topic. I just happen to be new to it, so bear with me. For the past, there we go. For the past 20-ish years, I've been determined and lucky to embrace a busy life of music and theater, teaching and performing. These careers have led me all over the country. I did some quick math. I've lived in over 40 places. Fast forward through all of this to the fall of 2019. Oh, wrong way. I now teach in Minto, North Dakota. They agreed to work around Medora schedules in the beginning. In the spring of 2020, while all was quiet, I decided to find a rescue dog named Milo and buy a house for the first time on 20th Street. There we are. That's a few days ago. Yeah, he's great. I love it. I love being back home. I've always loved this neighborhood. Growing up, living in the country, both of our after-school babysitters lived on the north end, and we would always trick-or-treat in this neighborhood. I told myself long ago that if I ever had the opportunity to buy a house, it would be on the north end of East Grand Forks, and here I am. Last fall, I attended a meeting and newly learned about the street replacement project that I had no idea about in my neighborhood that they had been facing for over 2 decades. Since this meeting, I guess I decided that there must be a way to figure this out, and more than likely, it would need to be me. And so I always say, there's always a way, always. If I can barely afford my mortgage and any special assessments as a full-time music teacher, giving extra piano lessons and doing lots of theater on the side, well, what about my neighbors? Some of them busy young families, single-parent income situations, fixed budgets due to retirement. There must be a way to supplement this cost, right? We all want this street to be replaced, but we can't afford it. So now what? Well, these are just some pictures, some from Mayor Gander, but this was last summer. Had appeared on our street as far as how the thaw affected 20th Street. And I run every day, and Fifth Avenue, when I'm coming home, it's just a patchwork of different repairs over the last several decades. It just hasn't had the time or attention. Well, I started to learn more about the issue, and I followed one lead after the next. I guess not under an engineer's hat, but as a resident. I called MnDOT, and yes, I know we don't qualify for state money because we're not a road. I learned that we are not a state aid street either, like 17th, although part of me thinks we maybe should be with our heavy traffic in our neighborhood through street, especially with tending to residents further west and north of us using the streets. We're a bus route, which has caused wear and tear, and during the flood we became a throughway for the clay trucks coming from the technical college on their way to 8th Avenue to get to the dike. This made sense, right? Get the trucks to the dike with the fastest route possible. My neighbors remember the trucks lined up bumper to bumper on 20th. Remember, 20th Street wasn't initially intended to connect to 220. This is actually a recent flood picture of the street, or the walking bridge, the north bridge I run, and I couldn't run that day. Not that way, anyway. After the flood, they paved the truck route connecting 20th Street due to some sewer issues, of course, related to the flood and heavy unexpected traffic. This made 20th Street a heavily traveled throughway route when it was already up for repair at that time. It was originally constructed in 1985, and by 1997, it did need some attention. So. Another factor, I guess, to note is after the flood, the FEMA trailer park that sat just north of 20th Street and west of 220 was rebuilt into a new neighborhood offering zero specials. In hindsight, the specials of this neighborhood could have helped towards the repairs of 20th and 5th. Several homeowners of these streets following the flood were told that their streets would be fixed. They just needed to wait their turn, and they have. But no matter what's in the past, now we're here, and we must look forward to find a solution. So that's where I come in, I guess. Here's our beautiful, there you go. So after realizing that we couldn't be supplemented with local funds at this time, I thought to myself, I guess I have to reach higher. I called the offices of Michelle Fishbach and Amy Klobuchar. They were very kind, but they directed me to more of a local approach. So on January 31st, I scheduled a meeting with the governor. Why not? I know. This sat pending for about a month, and then I got nervous and I started calling, and they finally did call me back, so I was excited. I knew Mayor Gander and some of the council members would be down in St. Paul for the annual legislation day in early March. And that's not the winter version, of course, but in early March, I knew I could possibly go to the meeting with them since they were down there in the cities. Let's see. It had been discussed that a petition might be a logical approach or a helpful asset in approaching the governor's office. So my neighbors, Matt and Christy Norton, said, why don't you meet the Solis? Well, the Solis are Mike and Trudy Soli. They live on 20th as well, and we started a petition. If you're simply, I lost my place. Mike and Trudy Soli were very encouraging to seek state funds and wanted to help. In fact, I couldn't have done this project without them. They continue to be just as involved as I. Our dream goal is to have an annual block party in the middle of our new streets. Wouldn't that be awesome? So with the city's okay, the three of us conducted the petition. In the cold evenings of February along 5th and 20th and Garden Court, we collected 49 signatures. That made me giggle because of the 49 feet. I don't mean that. But, so we kind of split the task. I went down 5th and Garden, and they went down 20th. I mean, excuse me. If you're simply going to ask support from your governor for $1 million, that's kind of an easy ask for somebody to agree, yeah, you can go ask. It was fun, and we met and visited with many new people. As I shared with the mayor a few days ago, I did get the door slammed in my face once. I had to laugh. This gentleman, he was the first house of my evening, and I must have sounded too enthusiastic for his taste. I said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor from down the street, and I'm headed to the governor to ask for $1 million to fix our streets on Friday." And he said, "Well, good luck!" And I just stood there for a minute and giggled and thought, well, that just happened. I haven't seen him yet, but I'll try to engage him in conversation later this summer. Might as well. And let's see. I was reminded again, though, that I'm new to this issue. Many residents have sat on it for years and years. Regarding our petition, this is the 20th as it rounds the apartments going towards from 7th Avenue onto 8th there. Regarding our petition to ask the governor for $1 million, it turns out that we were denied the opportunity of an in-person meeting. I felt so bad reporting this to our neighbors, especially the Solis. But the following week, I was given the opportunity of a conference call with 3 people on staff at the Capitol, among them being Eric Rudin, state legislation liaison for MnDOT to the governor's office. He was very helpful to provide examples of bill submissions from other Minnesota cities of the past year for their project submissions. Among many things, I learned this. There are 2 ways to go about asking for state funds, either through the city government with solicitations or through local legislation. Listening to Reed and to Brian, I should have just asked you first. I started to call Representative Deb Keel and Senator Mark Johnson. Senator Mark Johnson got right back to me. I had learned of their deadline for submissions of March 25th. So I stepped it up. I spoke several times to the senator's assistant. He said that if Senator Johnson chooses to introduce our street project replacements as a bill, he would then reach out to the city engineer for specifics. So I had to go see Mr. Emery. We had a great meeting where I learned exactly what will happen to our street when it is replaced. I know now what a drain tile is. Thank you very much. It's not a tile from your shower. Below the street, it encourages trapped water to drain into our storm sewers. This will lengthen our lifespan of our streets by decades, actually. I learned that sidewalks are a requirement for any street being replaced going forward, even if a neighborhood such as ours isn't used to having them. I also learned more about the distribution of specials in EGF. I'm told we only assess the direct residents on streets of the project at hand. I wouldn't mind if we could expand it as far as end benefits to other neighborhoods north and west of us, for example, that use 20th and 5th to get to 220 or 8th Avenue, but that's not my decision, and I also do understand why they assess that way. Other projects near me wouldn't affect me, for example. I learned that the cities are not, I guess we're not allowed to sponsor a street savings account, even if we did a fundraiser and save for streets. I learned that we are not eligible to ask for citywide levy, which would ask for a small monthly contribution from each household in East Grand Forks for projects such as ours or others going forward. But it seemed like a nice idea, but maybe that's where the sales tax idea would be a citywide ask. I've sure met some wonderful people while working on this project. Many of you, in fact, in this room. I was able to speak directly to Deb Keel last Thursday for the first time. In working closely with Senator Johnson, she shared that their goal for us would be to work together to prepare our project for a bill submission next year. When I visited with Mr. Emery, I was hopeful that he would hear from him before March 25th, before the deadline, but Representative Keel told me there were actually over 5,000 submissions this year from the state of Minnesota alone. Our chance for consideration would have been slim to none, especially with only half of the legislation on the dotted line at that time. So here we are, the State of the City 2022. We have just publicly received our new bids for this project. We came just in under the engineer's estimate. The original estimate was 1.524 million. The lowest bid is now at 1.475 million. And this is just the span of the residents of the two streets, about 7 blocks, and then some of Garden Court. So a smaller area for that amount of money is just hard to do. I would still owe 27.7 over 20 years, just my house, the highest being around 33,000. The street continues to worsen, and we know we have to fix it. The prices rise faster than wages, and we will formally meet to discuss bids on May 17th. Here's my victory. I firmly believe there's always a way, always, and there is. We'll find it. The City Council, Mayor Gander, the city employees, our neighbors, Mike Trudy and I, we all have worked too hard on this project to give up. We have to keep going. I'm grateful to be back home, East Grand Forks. I know I have big things yet to do in my life, and I guess this is one of them. Notice my coat. I still wear this coat when I go visit my parents. It stays there. And I forgot to bring it in. It's in my car. But this is Milo and I, and my goal is to, it must have been meant to be that I would come home to East Grand Forks, because I've had that coat, I think, since 6th grade basketball. My goal is to find $1 million to supplement the project, and I will. We will. I know it. With much East Grand Forks love, there is always a way. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Misty. We're approaching the 1 o'clock hour. If anyone has to leave, I fully understand. We'll go a little over. Make it as entertaining as we can, but by all means, if anyone has to go, we fully understand. And I take responsibility for that, Megan. Another goal for 2021 was to enhance our business community. We're focused on business retention and expansion. A little later on in today's program, we'll take a walk around the community and just see what we can see there. One of our goals for 2021 was to keep our financial reserves at our target, and even through COVID, because of some very good spending, really reining in spending and good accounting by our city staff, and of course with help from the federal and state governments, we're actually coming through COVID and coming out the other end in about as good a shape as we were, which again, strong reserves and not having had to raise local property taxes any more than about the rate of inflation. We will continue to look at entry-level housing. We won't tire of that. It's very challenging in this environment with building costs and building materials being what they are. We've made some progress on local government aid after years of actually losing LGA from the state. We actually saw that kind of flatten out and start to come up a little bit, and we'll continue working on that. As you know, every dollar of LGA that comes in is a dollar we do not have to levy here locally. East Grand Forks has a lot of important linkages with groups in our community. We have pre-K and 12th grade education. Our schools are amazing. Superintendent Mike Colness, along with the faculty and administration, give excellent service to our school-age kids. They led our facilities through COVID-19 pandemic wonderfully and accomplished major facility updates in the past year, including parking lots and new roofs on several of our schools. Bring in Sacred Heart School and Riverside Christian School, and the educational opportunities for our children are almost endless. With the city of Grand Forks, Mayor Bochensky and I have a great working relationship, and I really enjoy attending various functions with him. He wasn't able to be here. He had to be out of town for a hockey tournament. Now that I know he cheats, though, at zipline racing, I'll be ready for the next time. That was a Greenway takeover event last summer, and I was really nicely ahead, and then I felt a tug on my shirt. Next thing I know, he sort of catapults ahead. Not cool. We do work very, very closely with the Grand Forks City Administrator, Todd Phelan, Council President Dana Sandy, and the rest of the Grand Forks City Council. Believe it or not, we actually tend to be more cordial in person than you might hear over the media. Grand Forks Air Force Base. We're blessed to have the Grand Forks Air Force Base in our community. Over the past year, I've gotten to know Base Commander Colonel Timothy Curry, who took command of the base on June 30th of 2021. Colonel Curry is an amazing young man. Young because he's more than 10 years younger than I am. Our Air Force Base personnel are fortunate to serve under his command. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have leading our Air Force Base right here locally right now because of the changing role and the changes in technology and all the stuff in the future than Colonel Curry. So thank you to everyone from the Grand Forks Air Force Base, to all members of the Armed Forces, active duty, National Guard, Reserves, and retired. Thank you. You know, we also have a school in our community, Northland Community Technical College, and I think we'll go ahead and take a look. I made a visit over there, and we'd like to run that if we could, please. So here we are at Northland Community Technical College with Dr. Sandy Cadieux. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mayor Gander.
So good to be here.
Yes.
Well, today, when this video is showing, it's going to be the 21st of April. It marks 1 year since you arrived here at Northland. I guarantee that in that year, there have been some highlights and maybe a few low points. Want to tell us about them?
Yeah, so a year ago, April 21st, I was named president by the Board of Trustees for the Minnesota State Community and Technical Colleges. I think, highlights are to get Northland back into the community and engage with the community on a different level. We were part of several events, parades, and those sorts of things to let the community know what we're doing.
We've heard from American Crystal and we've heard from Northern Valley Machine that they employ a lot of your graduates, and of course they're all throughout our community, through the region, probably through the world. We also know that you do some customized training for industry. So tell us about that. How does that go?
Yeah, so we offer education to a lot of different populations. So we do our traditional programming, which is degree and diploma, but then we also offer workforce training, which some people call it, and in that is customized training. So we're actually standing in our mechatronics lab right now, and in our mechatronics lab is a unique way of delivering education that is what's called competency-based. So we can offer our normal credits in really small chunks, a quarter of a credit or half a credit, and that works for both a traditional student who's going to get a degree in mechatronics, but that also works for the American Crystal, Sugar, and all of our other businesses who want to train their people on just very specific skill sets. And we can mix and mingle, and we do that in this lab.
Is there anything else we should know about Northland?
I think one of the things that I often like to brag about is we are home to a NSF-funded National Center for Autonomous Technology. This complements the aerospace industry in our region, but not a lot of two-year colleges have these specific centers. And that's really something to be proud of as an institution, as a community, that we provide the training for unmanned systems repair. So we were one of the first in the United States to be able to offer that program, and then we train all the other schools to be able to offer that as well.
So as you consider Northland's plans for the future, what can East Grand Forks do to help facilitate that?
I think one of the things that, we're in the midst of our strategic plan, and partnerships is going to be key and critical. We need to develop partnerships and lean on each other as a community to be able to advance the community as a whole. That's going to be important.
Dr. Cadieux, thank you so much for being part of our program here today. And we look forward to many years of having you in our community and educating our young folks and getting them ready for careers.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure talking with you today.
Over the past year, I've really enjoyed getting to know Dr. Sandy Cadieux. I learned that she grew up in Wisconsin, most recently served a school in Hazard, Kentucky. Of course, the inspiration for the show Dukes of Hazzard. I also learned that she operates a small chicken ranch, or maybe a hobby farm. So she's really, though she came from here and there, she's one of us now, and we're so glad to have her. To the University of North Dakota. The UND, University of North Dakota, is an invaluable resource for our area. UND's enrollment, as we know, is upwards of 13,500. UND employs almost 2,500 people from our region. UND brings tons of sports and cultural events to our community. We're glad you're here. UND President Andrew Armacost has been with us for almost 2 years and is doing a great job. He has the respect of students, of faculty, and administration. He's also well respected in the community. I see good things ahead for UND with President Armacost here. In past years, I've requested and received detailed reports from our city department heads about their accomplishments for the past year and their plans for the future. This year I gave them a break, but be prepared. Next year, we'll be back at you. We do have City Council President Mark Olsted to tell us about awards given to our police and fire departments this year. President Olsted, will you come on forward, please, for that?
Sir. Good afternoon. Appreciate it. I want to take a few minutes and go through some awards that were given out here recently to the police department and our fire department. First thing, person you see on the screen here is Officer Felicia Zanata. She's being recognized for the Code 3 for Christmas. Felicia has been instrumental in keeping the Code 3 for Christmas moving forward and in fact growing larger. In 2021, this program served over 150 families. Felicia's efforts and dedication to this program have helped make the holidays seem brighter for many of these East Grand Forks families. And she's here with us today, so if you can give her a round of applause, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the Civic Recognition Award. On July 27th, 2021, Officer John Garbansky was on patrol when he was flagged down by a subject who reported someone having a medical emergency. Officer Garbansky responded to the resident and located a subject who was breathing but unconscious. Officer Garbansky requested the EGF fire and Ultra ambulance personnel respond to the location. The subject was transported to the Ultra hospital where they recovered from the medical emergency. Family members of the subject contacted the East Grand Forks Police Department requesting to be able to personally thank Officer Garbansky and stated that they were convinced the subject would have died if were not for his actions. And Mr. Garbansky couldn't be here today, so please give him a round of applause also. I'm going to move on to a life-saving award that was given out. On July 27, 2021, an incident while on patrol approximately 3:55, Sergeant Greg Galen observed an open garage door at a residence on the point of East Grand Forks. Sergeant Galen found this suspicious due to the time of the day and extreme temperature. It was 18 below at the time, and decided to check more closely. Sergeant Galen found an unresponsive female subject laying on the floor of the garage. Sergeant Galen immediately requested medical assistance and closed the garage door. Officer Justin Rue arrived and assisted Sergeant Galen and getting blankets from the home and attempting to warm the subject. East Grand Forks Fire Department and Ultra Ambulance responded and subsequently transported the subject to Ultra Hospital. Life-saving award was presented to Greg Galen here a couple weeks ago, and he's also here with us today. If you want to give him a round of applause, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to go through a couple, and I'll get to the person you see on the screen here in a second. I want to recognize some things that were awarded this last year here with the fire department. We had a bunch of retirees that happened. Kevin Bushy was assistant fire chief for 25 years. He retired in 2021. Jeff Anderson here recently just retired after 30 years as assistant fire chief. Jeff Voigt and Chad Erickson both were paid on call firefighters in 2021. They served for 10 years and retired. We do have a new firefighter, EMT also, Nicholas Derrick. You came on. And we also have a handful of promotions that happened. Ryan Swain became the assistant fire chief in 2021. Austin Shea became assistant fire chief in 2022. Thomas Hychak, an engineer, and Hunter Olson also became engineers with the fire department. Now I'll call your attention to the gentleman on the screen right now. It's firefighter, Casey Clement. I'll read off what the Chief Bushy gave me the other day. He was awarded this a couple weeks ago at a meeting they had to get together. East Grand Forks Fire Department mission is to serve our community with a well-trained team of capable individuals who are always ready. Our Firefighter of the Year award is built around that mission. The award is given to the firefighter that shows this commitment to training, commitment to responding when needed. Casey Clement is our Firefighter of the Year. Casey responded to 100% of our fire calls. Casey also attended all our scheduled training drills except for one. Casey made up that one by attending an out-of-town training class. Casey has shown his dedication, commitment to serving our community as a well-trained team member who has also proven to be always ready. Casey is always a great example of our core values, which are selfless, evolving, reliable, vigilant, integrity, courageous, and educated. I should also mention that Casey is always willing to do what needs to be done and more. He has served on several committees, helped with many public education events, spends extra time training as a technical rescuer, and serves as a treasurer of our Relief Association. And Casey's here also. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
We've covered a lot of what our goals for the coming year will be. One we haven't stressed too much quite yet, and this is going to be the crux of the balance of our program today. Business development, including commercial, industrial, with an eye toward childcare and affordable housing, as these ultimately do impact business development. This Monday, I want to make everyone aware that we have at the Spud Junior at 6:30, there will be a community town hall meeting open to everyone. I want you, even on the way out, if you'd like, Carla will be there at the end to get you signed up. It's free to sign up. There will be a meal provided, and we would like everyone to take part in that. So it's a community forum, particularly for childcare. We have about 210 slots needed that are not met for childcare, and we know how that impacts families. We know how that impacts businesses, and so we're going to try to brainstorm and figure out how to get our heads around some of that. The theme for this year's event was going to be, and in fact is, you love our downtown, just wait till you see the rest of our city. Really proud of our downtown, Cabela's, the movie theaters, the state campground, the Greenway Trail, and the boat launch area, and all the great restaurants. That said, East Grand Forks is so much more than that. I took a loop south of town, and I came across R.J. Zavril and Sons corporate office. They've been a great employer in East Grand Forks since 1951 and are incredibly generous when there's a need in the community. I passed by Higher Grounds and Superior Fenders. To the south and east, I discovered Simplot Grower Solutions in the Thompson Elevator. I wrapped around and came by Vegan Construction. Tucked away right there is a world-class builder of slip-form grain elevators and many other things. Another great employer in our region since 1938. Then I went by Todd's Trailer Sales and Rental. If you haven't been there, Todd has a nice place. Next there was Bert's Truck Equipment. They've been in East Grand Forks since 1939 and are still going strong in the third generation. There's Mayo Manufacturing, founded in 1952, constantly expanding ever since. Next was Lumber Mart, originally established in 1949, became Lumber Mart in 1982. They supply lumber and all building materials. They manufacture trusses. They provide complete drafting services, many other things. Next, as I traveled along Business Highway 2, I came upon our number one employer in the whole city, American Crystal Sugar. Stopped by to visit with Lloyd Kennedy for a little bit. I'd like you to see how that went. So here we are at American Crystal in East Grand Forks with Lloyd Kennedy, factory manager. Thank you so much for letting me come over.
You bet. Thanks for coming.
Glad to be here. You know, if I look back on the history of this great facility, the history of the company goes all the way back to around 1890 with a sugar processing plant in Platt, Nebraska. This factory opened its doors in 1926. Maybe you can tell us about the history of the company, whatever you'd like to share, and also how has sugar processing changed during that time?
Sure. The American Crystal Sugar family actually started with the first plant in the 1890s, or 1890, and then there were several plants that opened up a few years later. When 4 of those plants were built and operating, they formed American Sugar Beet Company in 1899, which became American Crystal Sugar in the 1930s. Now obviously we've changed a lot since then. For example, the original factory took over 450 people to operate. A lot of it was manual type operation, and it only processed about 3,500 tons of sugar beets a day. And you compare it today, we operate the factory with about 40 people on shift, but we process about 3 times the amount of sugar beets that they did at then. So from the standpoint, the core chemistry hasn't changed, but really the technology and the equipment and the efficiency that we process sugar beets today has drastically changed.
You know, I know there are a lot of great jobs at American Crystal. I know you have folks in the factory. I know you have just a whole variety of different jobs that are here. good jobs, long-term jobs. Just tell me about that, the jobs that you have here.
Sure. When you exclude harvest, because during harvest for those period of times, our staffing goes up, and those are very short-term jobs. Year-round on this site, we have just over 350 employees that work here, and the jobs do vary for everything for general labor to professional level jobs. Quite a few engineers, agriculturists or agronomists, chemists, mechanics, welders, electricians, instrument and electronic controls technicians, computer programmers, pretty much the whole gamut of jobs.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about American Crystal, either company-wide or here in East Grand Forks?
American Crystal Sugars, it's one of our core values to be a member of our community, and we greatly appreciate the partnership and the cooperation we have with the City of East Grand Forks. So very proud to be a part of the community.
We're so glad you're here. Next, I went by the Strata ready-mix concrete plant, one of the new arrivals into the area. Welcome, Strata. I saw Folsom Farms, a fifth-generation family-owned grower, packer, and distributor of red and yellow potatoes, right here in East Grand Forks. And then right next door was A&L Potato. They are another family business established in 1941. They grow, store, wash, and market red potatoes and yellow potatoes. Next was a newly expanded Northland Custom Woodworking. Back to the east, I found the Hefty Seed Company. Not exactly sure what they do, but the building looked cool, so I took some pictures. Coming back into town along Highway 2, I went by Nelson International Truck Dealership. There was Fertilon, a full-service, 4-season landscaping and lawn care service. They've been here in business in the greater Grand Forks area since 1980. I saw Midwest Ag Sales. I'm so glad they opened in that spot. I've driven by there dozens of times and thought, boy, we need to get a business in there, and there they are. Happy to see that. I swung past Northern Valley Machine, so I decided to stop in for a visit and say hello to Frank Walski. And here's how that went. So I'm here at Northern Valley Machine, here in the Industrial Park in East Grand Forks with Frank Walski, Vice President. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Yes.
Now, from what I understand, this organization started in about 1992 in a machine shop on the farm outside of Oslo and has grown to what it is today. Tell us about that.
Well, we have a variety of employees, engineers, machinists, electrical engineers, assemblers. It was a pretty humble beginning. I started with a lathe that I bought from my former employee, Ideal Aerosmith, and it was made in 1956. And so I found some work for that machine and kept it kind of busy and grew a little at a time and just worked 2 jobs. One was here at Ideal Aerosmith and the other one was just going back to the farm and working every day until I could afford to go out on my own.
You know, I don't think the average person knows what goes on out here at Northern Valley Machine. It's almost like a secret think tank lab kind of atmosphere. I know when I toured it over a year ago, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement that said I would not talk about anything I saw, any details of what I saw. And while you were here, and while I was here, I noticed that you do some work for a company called, and also finally the third company is.
They're our biggest customer.
Northern Valley Machine was recently named Boeing Supplier of the Year in a certain category. That you have to be really proud of that.
Yes.
Tell us what happened that they gave you that designation, and what does that mean?
Well, it has to do with the work that we've done for them and the speed in which we've completed. Because we're able to take and design something, and then fabricate it, do the machining, and then the assembly.
What do you see your biggest growth opportunity looking ahead?
It will be in designing and building automation.
Yeah. Well, you're the kind of employer that we want here in our city. We're really glad you're here.
Well, it's good to be here.
Just down the street, North Country Food Bank had a chance to stop and visit with Susie Belter, Executive Director. Here's how that went. So I'm here with Susie Belter of the North Country Food Bank. Susie, thanks for taking time to visit with us today.
Thanks for coming. We're so excited to have you.
The North Country Food Bank started in 1983 and came here to East Grand Forks just a couple of years ago. How did the move go, and how are you liking your new space?
Oh, we love it, and we are so glad to be here. We were in Crookston for 37 years, and now we've been here for just a little over 2 years. The space is amazing for us. A bigger building was what we needed for so long. The big thing is having the ability to house, store, and distribute more food. So we're sourcing food nationally, regionally, and locally. We bring that into our warehouse here in East Grand Forks, and then we turn around and distribute that to 220 partner agencies that get the food out to people in need. All of these local agencies in the communities around our service area get between 70 and 90% of all their food from us.
One of the elements that you really wanted to have here was the clean room, where you can take bulk food, package it into sizes that the consumer could use, and that opened the door to utilizing that bulk food where without a clean room you wouldn't have had a use for it.
Exactly. Or we could still use the food, but we had to pay to ship it somewhere, pay them to repack it, and then pay to bring it back. So having that clean room is a big deal. Ours is licensed by the Minnesota Department of Ag. It allows volunteers, like, if you get totes of cereal or spaghetti noodles, to repack that into manageable sizes, because our agency partners can't take a tote of food. It has to be more family-sized food.
Sounds like you also have some internal programs where you provide food to children and to seniors. Tell us about those programs.
We have the backpack program. We started that probably a little over 10 years ago. That's where kids who struggle with hunger get a bag of food on the weekend when there isn't school breakfast and school lunch. We pack and distribute over 15,000 bags a month for that program. We also have senior programs. One of them is called the CSFP program. It's through USDA. So low-income senior citizens can register for that program. And if you qualify, you get a 40-pound box of USDA commodities every month delivered to you.
What are your future plans for the North Country Food Bank?
Well, I think our future plans are to continue to grow. Right now, we're looking to add some positions in order to be able to do additional programming. We currently only have 10 employees, so volunteering is very important. And funding. We're not government funded. People tend to think that about food banks and food shelves. We are not. We rely on the generosity of the public to do the work we do. And one of the reasons we exist, for every dollar we receive, we can provide enough food for 5 meals. And if you think about that, where else can $1 do so much good?
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for letting us into your facility. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for letting me visit with you a little bit about what we do here at North Country Food Bank and how it impacts the community.
All right. We're coming down the home stretch. Thanks everybody for hanging in there. After I met with Susie, I drove past Hawks Manufacturing and Dakota Pete. Hawks Manufacturing, with their Dakota line, is a world leader in the design and manufacture of golf course maintenance equipment, and Dakota Pete has a complete line of products to enrich the soil. Then I went past St. Michael Furniture. Really glad to see them here. That building stood empty for entirely too long. It's so good to have a strong business in there with a good regional presence. Then I went past East Grand Inn, a long-time part of our community, and Fairfield Inn, again an important part of our business district. I see great opportunities for the hospitality industry if we're successful in going ahead with these recreation projects that we're planning. And I went by Hugo's. But I had time to really consider Hugo's as a powerful anchor to that whole eastern business district. I don't think they get enough credit for how stable they are, the quality of products and services they provide, and the volume of customers that they bring in and out of there that any business nearby can benefit from. Really a lot of gratitude for Hugo's. I went by the commercial lot west of Hugo's, which is staked for construction. It'll be a Dollar General store here very shortly. I guess they started to move dirt already over there. Now on the corner there's a new Walgreens store where a vacant building once stood. Happy to have them here. There they are. I'm going to give a quick plug for the National Day of Prayer observation coming up 2 weeks from today. As you know, the legislature of the U.S. has decided the National Day of Prayer should be the first Thursday in May. By presidential proclamation that day happens. The local observance for all of us, Grand Forks and East Grand Forks, the whole community, churches and Mayor Bochensky and all of us will gather For breakfast at the Eagles, we're going to alternate every other year. First year here, then hopefully over to Grand Forks next year. Breakfast, the 5th of May. You can sign up online, National Day of Prayer. You'll find it very easily. Still have lots to do. We have all the way down, we're going to jump down here to one property worth mentioning is the former Whitey's building. There it is, the original spot of Whitey's as it stood before the flood. But after the building was lost in the flood of '97, Whitey's reopened in a new location with their iconic horseshoe bar still intact. Later, the property was the home of Sicky's Garage. We were sad to see them go. Their burgers and rusty bucket hot tater tots really hit the spot. It's really tough also to see that building empty. You know, it's just kind of gloomy over there, not too much going on. But there is some activity there. It seems to be mostly just clearing out stuff for whatever's coming in next. I've heard some rumors of what may go in there next. And those rumors, oh, they gave it away. Those rumors could be just wishful thinking. Watching a certain national food celebrity during her mouth-watering dishes week after week in Girl Meets Farm on the Food Network. Maybe too good to be true, but it's actually true. We've gotten confirmation from Molly Ye and Nick Hagan. They've been married since 2014, living on Nick's family farm. And many of you probably watch her syndicated show on the Food Network every single week. They're going to open a restaurant in this location in the fall of 2022. So they are actively involved with their contractor, clearing out the space and preparing it for what they're going to put in there. So, I don't know what they'll serve, but I know it'll be tasty. We haven't had a look at their menu or what their plans are. They love the Whitey's history, and they're going to be very respectful of that going forward. So I hope you've enjoyed the tour of East Grand Forks. Every single one of you in this room is part of our success as a community, as a region. Thank you for all you do to make this community a great place to live. No State of the City address, though, would be complete without a trip to one of the local watering holes. This year was Casa Mexico, and so we're going to wrap up with that video, but thanks again for being here. I hope you leave with a smile and a bit of knowledge about what's going on here in East Grand Forks. And folks, you know, the only time residents ever contact us is to say thank you.
I know. And just act like we're not even here.
I would like to propose a toast to all of you. You know, we're so proud of our downtown, and our downtown has been the focal point of so much that we've done. And this year, we're going out beyond our downtown into the greater part of our city. We're looking at some infrastructure needs. We're looking at education, at industry, and at feeding our community and to those who need it the most. So I just want to say thank you to every single one of you that's been part of this, heading out into our State of the City. Hear, hear.
Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Let's get back to work.